Okay, so for demo part 3 on Jessie, I have gone ahead and added some reflected light. I used white colored pencil, haven't blended it yet. Adding texture and deepening tones in the underside of this hat. You can actually see this texture. Also, you can increase the texture just by flattening out the angle on your pencil. This hat has kind of a soft, almost like a cowhide texture, which makes sense. I think it is supposed to be cowhide in the movie. And you can see I can actually indicate texture, which you maybe can see it a little more clearly there. I can also, if I choose, blend that in a bit. Say I'm not happy with it. I'm going to soften it. I can go in and blend. Now, the one thing about that, though, is the black of your color pencil is a very rich tone. So if you start smearing it, it's going to really deepen your tone fast, which can be a big plus. Very effective on leather, on hair, human hair, like black colored hair. There's a lot of places where you may find that very effective. I'm actually going to now, since I did that, made more work for myself, just quickly go over this and see, get rid of those strokes. If you see yourself making an issue for yourself, solve it right then and there. So right about there, I'm going to leave it. Now, what I really wanted to get into, by the way, a little good habit, if you use your clear blender in a dark area, just scrub it out, make sure there's no dark tone in there. These 3 tones are my color pencils. These are my 3 of my cool grays. So we're actually going to use a little bit of this. That's what these are for. It's one of the things they're for. And I'll kind of show you how you can fine-tune, for example, the face. I'm going to drop in a little bit of tone here. And very light pressure, and you notice what I'm doing. I'm actually doing this. That's about how much pigment is going down on the paper. And I'm trying not to actually show strokes. If you get very good at this, you can do a blend like that. So if I'm doing this kind of very soft plastic, I don't really want to show my strokes. It's not really what I'm striving for. So here I am adding, just letting the adding tone, letting the pencil bump off the top surface of the paper. I can even blend it a little bit with the white I put there. And then, very cool, I can actually just lightly blend that in. Probably not a lot of work on that. Go through the side of the face here. Blend. Now I am using some pressure here. What that does is that you can actually blend it in nicely so that someone would not even be able to tell that you used pencil. Just seamlessly combining the pencil and the marker. So, a few darker tones I have to create in the face. This shadow. So, like I say, this is the point where you're actually working wet into dry, which is fine as long as I wet areas around my area that I'm working in. I can do this. So you see I'm enhancing some of the darker tonal areas. Need a little bit more darkness in the ear here. Separating the shapes, getting that side of the head to separate from the ear behind it. When I see an edge forming like you see it happening here, or strokes, just take a light color, a 10, a blender in this case. Let the paper do the blending. At that point, I think I'd like to deepen this just a bit more. So one thing I think I should do is put a little bit of a shadow detail on the neck here. And then blend it out to a lighter tone with the 10. You know, tiny details that are very important. If you look, cast shadows here, soft edge. Tells me the light source is soft. It is a CGI render, but you know they set the lights as part of the render, and those were soft focus lights. Spotlights with a, perhaps with just a soft focus on them. you can see, if you see an edge on the shadow, you know you're dealing with something more like a spotlight. I can actually put that shadow going across very quickly and easily. Now in the shirt, because I started with a base tone of about 20, I can now go to my shadows, and if I want them to look more convincing, instead of just leaving that edge like that, take, that was a 20 by the way, take a 10, and now render out and up, not all the way to the top edge, and you can see my tone. This is really 50, 60 down in here, and 30 in through here, and 40 there. So you can see I'm reading the tones all the time. I'm actually assessing where I'm at and evaluating my tones. And you know, that was a skill set. Took about 3 years as a young illustrator to get that down. And I realized my tones were weak when I saw my work in black and white. As I get so fixated on the color, I didn't realize I was forgetting to establish good values in the artwork. And so my artwork, when printed in black and white, which is a great thing to do with your color work occasionally, just to test it, if it doesn't hold up, if the contrast just goes away, it means you're not identifying proper tones as you're working in color. Especially in the early part of your career, you want to kind of test yourself that way. I'd say if you do a traditional piece, scan it and desaturate it in Photoshop. Just take all the color out and assess what you think of it. If you need to punch up the contrast a lot, you're probably not identifying your values as well as you should be. That arm is basically done right there. But having put those tones in the arm, I see that this is still too light. Now this is a white, this is actually like a 10% gray, the shirt. That means that this 30% tone on the vest should really get a lot darker. And there's a soft shadow under the collar. And I do want it to look soft. So I put a stroke of, let's see what I'm using. I'm using 30, which that's a good choice. And then what I do is I diffuse the edge of it. So I take a 10 and just feather that edge. Then I take a 70, believe it or not, and I go up inside the top of the shadow and bring in a little bit of that 70, and then go right back to my 10 or a blender. I just want it, and there you go. Soft focus shadow makes the color lift off the surface. This white, this looks like a box. We don't want boxes. We want an actual flip of the collar. There should be a transition on here. Don't leave anything just white. It should have a tone, because that's what we see in reality, in nature, in anything we're looking at with our eyes or photographing. You're going to see some kind of tone there. So if a photo is blown out, the reference is washed out, add a little tone. That's where you start to improve on your reference. Then, you notice I established darker darks in the eyebrows, the eyelashes, and the mouth. I actually did that to see the face better. These are just about where they should be. The true 100% black is in the pupils and in the inside of the mouth, and right here around her head on the hat. So we're getting pretty close as far as overall values and tones. I wanted to show you a couple of things. Number one, I'm doing this little texture on the shirt. It's ready for texture. I feel like I've got my tones in. And so I can go in and do all this ornate stitching. And that's why I save this kind of thing for the end. It's tempting to go in and try to do all this stuff first because maybe it seems like it's fun. But don't do that. You know, you got to do the base work of getting your tones in. I'm kind of cheating that a little bit, but I can put the little crossbars in. It's sort of like a little railroad track running on her shirt. But it's as simple as that to do that pattern there. There's also stitching, white stitching here on the shirt. I would probably want to sharpen my pencil a bit more, but you can indicate white stitching like that. Take a darker gray pencil, put the shadow under the stitch. Makes it look dimensional, makes it look like it lifts off the surface. Dimensionality is what we're going for. We're not trying to do a cartoon. We actually want even the small